Edmonton, West Henday.
Dante kagiawak, mitzigason sipsis, kipotaga otinia, nianehia tasuen napeo. Nikawe Karen Arcand, notawe Vaughn, egua Nikawes Debbie Paul. Nogomak Ella, egua Beatrice Arcand. Nimosumak Angus Paul, Edward Arcand, egua Dan Alexis. Nisimsak Mark, egua Hale Arcand Paul, egua Christy, egua Jason. Nisimsak Nitosim Isquemak, Hale Mila Walker, Rosalie Arcand Paul, Noah Yanfong, Era Arcand Lovett, Violet Arcand Kootenay, egua Haley Page, egua Addison Morgan. Nitosimak Phoenix Walker, egua Cullen Arcand Paul, egua Terrence Morgan. Nisimsak Mark egua Hale Arcand Paul, egua Christy, egua Jason. Say them twice, why not? Tanse, we are here on the traditional territories of the Nehio, Nitsitapi, Nakota Ishka, Dene, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. Many folks refer to this territory as Treaty 6, and this is an important relationship to this land that was entered into between our ancestors for all of our benefit. Yes, even today. Specifically, I can trace my direct ancestor, Kastawiskum, who entered into Treaty 6 here at Fort Edmonton a few short steps from where I now have a desk and have given my life to the public service. This adds a responsibility on me to ensure that we honor our treaty relationship every single day, because this House owns it to our Indigenous kin. I just introduced you with one of the oldest laws the Nehiyawak have retained, despite decades of colonial violence and attempted eradication by successive Canadian governments. Our laws have persevered, just like our nations and our people. This law, to identify our kinship and connections, is enhanced by the law of Wukotuin, which creates a moral obligation for good relations with each other. Although relatively straightforward, it is one that we hold tightly, now especially. We are facing unprecedented numbers of folks claiming Indigenous identity, or as is aptly called in pop culture, pretendianism. This is one way to address the ongoing harm caused by folks claiming our identities for their own personal gain. This includes those folks who do not have any connection to an Indigenous community in present day. Yes, that also means the Premier's tenuous claims of Cherokee roots. Not only is it a Nehio law, but it's important to introduce myself and my family to acknowledge that I would not be here today without all of these amazing people standing beside me and encouraging me to reach for the stars, when so many told me to keep my head and voice down so as to not disrupt the status quo. Mr. Speaker, my mama raised me to be a force of good in this world, and that is exactly what I intend to do. In my introduction, I used my traditional name, Sipsis, which was a name given to me when I was born by my Chapan Jean Arcand, my paternal great-grandmother, who made an offering for me at ceremony. My name translates to Little River, and for me, it's a constant reminder that water is life, and we must always defend it. I also mentioned that I come from the Alexander First Nation, or Kupuutaga, which loosely translates to the bushed-in people. If you've ever visited Alexander, you'd know that the title fits. The amount of trees and small ponds and rolling hills gives it a feeling that it is truly the bush. And I was born at the Charles Council Hospital, the old Indian hospital that is now being turned into condos. I spent most of my life on my res, and yes, I like to say res because that's what I've called it my entire life. And I'm proud of that upbringing because I believe this is what shaped me. The beautiful sprawling hills of Alexander were where I would drive my quad or bike, dodging not so little res dogs with my friends and cousins, because in our way, cousins are always our first best friends. As the first Two-Spirit MLA in Alberta's history, take my place in history along the many firsts that our team accomplished for the 31st legislative session, and they spoke today. The largest official opposition in Alberta's history, the first Black woman elected in our province's history, the first First Nations woman elected, and I could go on. We accomplished these important firsts because our team is committed to representation of all Albertans, because our lived experiences help this House to navigate difficult policy and legal considerations. Throughout my career, I've dedicated my expertise and knowledge to further the priorities and rights of Indigenous peoples. From First Nations education to protecting our sacred treaties as a lawyer, I've worked hard to ensure that my people, and indeed all Indigenous peoples across Canada, retain and strengthen their rights, laws, and sovereignty that have never been eroded by any government or statute, despite their best efforts. Protecting and strengthening the relationship between our province and the sovereign nations found in Alberta who predate all of these institutions on this land is something we must all work toward on our journey of truth and reconciliation. Wekotowin requires it, Mr. Speaker. While in our role in official opposition as the critic of Indigenous relations and reconciliation, I honor the important role in keeping this government accountable on these points. Now, as the elected member representing my constituents in West Henday, it is my duty to hold this government accountable to its decisions that impact all Albertans. For example, the misuse of Albertans' hard-earned tax dollars on advertisements outside of Alberta to stick it to, you guessed it, Justin Trudeau. And hey, for the record, Mr. Speaker, I'm not a big fan of him or his decisions either, but we don't need to be spending millions of Albertans' dollars on wrapping Toronto subway cars just to send him a message. When we have over 4,000 unhoused folks on Edmonton streets with the brutal winter around the corner. The work ahead of us is a mountain, and specifically the beautiful Rockies Eastern Slopes, which we will work hard every single day to protect in this legislature, along with many of the priorities of everyday Albertans. From pensions to schools, climate change, and healthcare, the Alberta NDP will never let this government forget that there are 38 of us who represent many beautiful and diverse communities and their interests.
Yes.
I am so thankful for the number of previous MLAs who represented my amazing constituents. John Carson, the Honourable Dave Egan, and Raj Sherman, to name a few. I'm also thankful for my team and volunteers, Phil, Stephen, Crystal, Leonard, Nancy, Alice, Beth, Don, Keith, Mahesh, Nadine, Roseanne, Teralyn, Sydney, Jim, Irene, Gina, Karen, and Lyric Jane. Mr. Speaker, my riding has changed so very much since the start of this millennium, in so many ways beyond just their boundaries. We've expanded the limits of the city of Edmonton with beautiful communities of Secord, Rosenthal, Hawks Ridge, Trumpeter, Starling, Kinglet Gardens, and the numerous estates at Big Lakes. These beautiful communities, of which I call home with my supportive and handsome partner Jason, who is in the gallery now, and our adorable golden retriever Jake, who is unfortunately not in the gallery, are joined by our gorgeous tree-lined established neighborhoods of Calder, Westview Village, Athlone, La Pearl, Belmead, Terralosa, and Lewis Estates, all of which have fabulously active and cohesive community leagues who are bringing their communities together for fundraisers, community dances, casino nights, and sometimes even a hot air balloon ride over their community. Many of these communities are sadly awaiting many services that this government have overlooked to date. For example, the good people of West Henday have been asking this UCP government and their last term for schools for their young ones. Thankfully, they had some reprieve when the NDP government built 3 in the riding to meet the growth. But, Mr. Speaker, we need so much more for the many, many families than young families that are building their homes in these communities. They have been asking day in and day out for our infrastructure needs to be met, including intelligent and capable modifications to our highways that have outgrown our ever-expanding neighborhood needs. The Whitemud and 16A have far exceeded the needs of West Henday. You should try taking a trip on them during rush hour, Mr. Speaker. It's not fun. They're also asking this government to seriously consider the affordability crisis in real, tangible ways, Instead of complaining about the carbon tax, they want the UCP government to actually provide them with real solutions. They need this government to seriously consider putting in meaningful caps on their utility bills so that they don't have to pay their bills on their already overloaded credit cards or risk blackouts. I've met folks from my community that are struggling to make ends meet, from their rising rents, utility bills, and insurance, and the rising costs of being able to just put a meal on their table. One family in my riding admitted that they were forced to eat rice for weeks because they could not keep up with the piling bills that have grown since the UCP took office. We're also seeing a rise in tents and makeshift homes setting up around our communities that were never there when the NDP were in government, and which have certainly increased across the board since the UCP took the helm. When I speak with constituents about these structures, I'm not met with pleas to lock them up or hide them away. Instead, I hear genuine concern about their well-being. They, much like many of my colleagues on this side of the House, are heartfelt in wanting better for all Albertans, including those experiencing houselessness. Every Albertan deserves a roof over their head. It is a human right, full stop. Mr. Speaker, the people of Edmonton West Henday have elected me to bring these concerns to this legislature, to have honest and open debate with the members across the aisle. While we may not always agree on which approach is best, I sincerely hope that this session can address our collective issues and help Albertans out when there are too many pressures already on them. I'm here because of my ancestors. I'm here for the next 7 generations. I'm here for those queer kids that deserve to see themselves in this house because they belong here too. Eksimaga nanaskaman, Mr. Speaker.